Good evening. I'd like to call this public hearing to order. Thank you for joining us tonight. Public hearings are an essential part of the municipal planning process. They provide council with an opportunity to hear directly from the community before making decisions that will shape the future of our town. Tonight, we have two items to consider. The first is a proposed amendment to the land use bylaw for the general commercial C1 zone. These amendments focus on amenity space and parking requirements. The second item is a proposed rezoning of the property located at 157 Main Street, PID 554-67070, from the 1 and 2 unit R2 dwelling zone to a medium density R3 residential zone. We will not be debating this tonight or making a decision. Tonight, this is an opportunity for council to listen to the public. Your input will form part of the official record and will be carefully considered before council makes any decisions. How the meeting will proceed tonight, staff will present a summary of the proposal. The applicant will then have the opportunity to make a presentation. Any members of public that are here will be invited to speak. Once these public comments are complete, the applicant will be invited to respond to any points raised, and each speaker will have up to 5 minutes to provide comments. We'll ask you to state your name and address for the record when you do speak. All remarks should be directed through the chair. Council will not respond to questions during the hearing, but staff may provide clarification if needed. So we're going to start tonight with the first proposal, which is the amendment to the C1 zone. And the rules tonight, this formal proceeding is a meeting of council. We'll ask that all participants remain respectful and avoid interruptions, side conversations. Every voice will be heard equally. So I will call the Director of Planning. He's already there, eager to present the first proposal.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Good evening, Mayor and Council, members of the public. I'm here to get the stage set for this proposed amendment to the general commercial C1 zone, looking at amenity space. Do I have feedback? Try now. That's better. So looking at amenity space and parking requirements. So a request for decision was initiated by council in the spring of 2023 regarding amenity space requirements in the general commercial zone. The recommendation back in 2023 was that, the recommendation in this RFD was that we amend the bylaw so that it does not apply to any pre-existing buildings in the downtown core. And this would allow any potential developers to convert some of the upper levels in these older buildings into more residential units. So the initial review in 2023 recommendation from staff was to make no changes to the requirements of land use bylaw. Council CAC of the day voted against staff recommendation but didn't provide further direction at the time. We've since picked up from there and staff has provided now options and recommendations to facilitate further discussion. So there was a quick review of the public participation meeting that was held back in June. So there were a couple questions regarding the National Building Code at the time regarding accessible parking and building design. So the information that we received from our building inspectors is that barrier-free units are only required when there are 25 or more units being created. And for most of this type of development, the C1 zone wouldn't apply. And that the parking stall question also only comes into play when barrier-free units are required. So that was the understanding that we gained from our building officials. We also received correspondence from the Kentville business community, now rebranded as Downtown Kentville. They focused primarily on parking. Some of the concerns they had regarding parking kind of underlined here for council. They believe, I'll state it verbatim, while KBC strongly supports adding residential spaces on the second floor of commercial properties, KBC does not support the elimination of parking requirements for new residential developments in the downtown at this time. And they cite 3 reasons down below regarding public transit, regarding already scarce public parking, and the need for downtown businesses to have convenient parking access for their customers. So KBC's position on this was that developers should continue to provide on-site parking wherever possible for upper-level residential units. And they support different solutions going forward and also looking into the parking situation as a whole. With regards to amenity space requirements, KBC did state its support for the proposed amendment, and we'll get into the details of that as we go. For everyone's general information, the area in light blue in the inset up in the top left is the general commercial C1 zone as it stands in the town of Kentville. And we have on the main map the sort of the aerial view of the area under consideration for these proposed amendments. Some of the general context for some of the reasons and the rationale behind what staff looked at. The understanding that older downtowns often have smaller lots, heritage buildings, and a more compact urban design, which can make standard amenity requirements challenging to provide. These downtown areas were provided before the car became a dominant feature in our lives, so traditional parking ratios sometimes clash with the downtown built form. The Kentville planning documents have considered this already. They're currently in place by limiting parking requirements to 0.5 spaces per residential unit. There's a greater overall in North America to reduce or eliminate parking standards. In our look through the province at the way different municipalities have looked at this, the lowest requirement that we found was 0.25 parking stalls per bedroom. This is some sections from our municipal planning strategy. I tried to pare it down a bit. The parking study 2011 it speaks to found that there are sufficient parking spaces for the needs of businesses and merchants in Kentville, and support the council's desire to reduce off-street parking within the general commercial zone. Also an objective council to encourage new development and the reuse of existing structures in the downtown area. And the third point, which is an excerpt again from the preamble, is that flexibility should be considered in viewing how on-site parking is administered. And this slide basically takes the three policies that were generated by council looking at parking in the general commercial C1 zone. So the first waived all off-street parking for all non-residential developments, so basically all commercial development, that council would consider cash in lieu for parking in that zone. And the third being that reduced minimum parking requirements, and that brought it down to the 0.5 per unit that it currently sits at. So staff's recommendation regarding parking requirements is that we consider removing them from the general commercial zone. So switching to amenity space. So this again is the preamble from the MPS, highlighting a few sections from that, where we, however, I'm going to start with reading the full top point. In certain areas of town, it may not be economically viable to require new multiple unit residential development, set aside large areas of land for recreation purposes. That's where council gives consideration for some options. This is particularly true in the downtown area where lot sizes are small and land values are quite high. Second point, that in consideration of amenity spaces, provision to allow some flexibility. And thirdly, the land use bylaw should allow for the option of providing such space in the form of internal recreational facilities rather than outdoor where not possible. So that's some of the rationale from 2018, 2017 when the current documents were put together. So RS21 is the policy regarding provision of space for recreational amenity spaces, right? That any new multiple unit dwellings or developments would include provisions for recreation and amenity space. And we, as staff, interpreted the idea of provisions a little more broadly in terms of the available public space that might be in the area, where we may be able to look to that as a potential an amenity space and the reason why someone might want to build units in an area. So that led to our recommendation of waiving amenity space requirements at discretion of the development officer if the proposed development is within a 400-meter route to a public open space. And that's one of the benefits of being downtown, is that you have more public open space and public opportunities available than you might in other parts of town. So it's sort of special zone in that sense. So in terms of summary, start where I ended. So with amenity space, we looked at 4 different options there and highlight on the one that staff has recommended regarding the 400-meter radius, or route, I should say. And secondly, for parking, we did add a 5th option based on the feedback that we received from KBC, now downtown Kentville, regarding parking study. All new data would be appreciated, but we feel that we're still holding with our original recommendation that parking requirements could be waived for new residential development in the C1 zone. Just to give a sense of next steps, so we're here on September 8th at the public hearing. This will go home to the council meeting on the 29th for proceeding forward or not. And okay, that ends my presentation.
Thank you very much, Director Shoup. I will open the floor if there are any questions of clarification from council. Just a reminder that we're not debating this tonight, so if you have any questions, now's your opportunity to ask them. Councillor Baker.
I apologize for being naive on this matter, but is there an overall downtown C1 development strategy that would include parking, facades, expectations of developments that would encompass all those things, of which parking might be kind of a sub?
One of the components of.
Components, thank you.
We don't have anything like that at this time. Where we are engaged in the plan review process, that might be an opportunity to bring up such a more an all-encompassing strategy for the downtown area, and it's something we can certainly keep in mind as we go forward with that process.
Thank you.
Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Director Shoup. So even though if we do move ahead with the elimination of the parking requirements, if a developer chooses to, or somebody building something, can they still put those parking spaces in there if they so choose? They're just not required to do so.
That's correct. Through the chair, there's no requirement for those parking spaces, but the property owner developers at their discretion of how they want to develop their property in terms of parking.
Right, can still do it. Okay, thank you.
All right. I will now open the floor to public comments. If you wish to speak, please come up and state your name before you make your remarks.
Say when. Is that good?
Should be.
Okay.
My name is Kate Bowser. I'm at 26 Mount Vincent Drive, and I would like some clarification from town staff on what flexibility means, if possible.
I have a feeling we're going to be going back and forth here. I'm just to clarify the question. I was wondering what version of flexibility for amenity space or for parking, for both?
Yeah, for both.
For both. With I brought in the language of flexibility because that's what's currently in the documents. And in terms of allowing flexible approach, so I'm trying to think of how to word this one. We're looking at reducing, in terms of amenity space, we're looking at reframing how that can be considered. So rather than having it on site, we're considering allowing it to be in the in the near vicinity, within a 400-meter route in this case. So that adds a little more flexibility for the developer to consider creating and us permitting residential units in the downtown area where there may not be any right now. So the flexibility is in that consideration. I think I kind of framed in that way. With respect to parking, I guess it's the flexibility as just a comment coming from council, whether if the developer wishes to provide parking spaces, they may. But in these situations, particularly where there's these legacy buildings where there's no opportunity for parking, that we may open up or for consideration some of the units, potential residential units that are associated with that property. I think that's the aspect of flexibility that I was considering anyway to put these forward. And I'm not sure if that answers the question or not, but I'm sure you.
Okay, thank you. I don't think the applicant's here tonight to respond to anything that was addressed, so I guess we'll move on to the next item.
Just take a second to change slides here. Oh, I just looked at that one. Hang on. There we go. Okay. So second item is with regards to the rezoning application for 157 Main Street. I'll only read the PID once. 55467070. So a complete application was received on May 13th of this year to rezone from the current 1 and 2 unit dwelling zone to the medium density residential R3 zone. And the concept that we've seen is this is to facilitate the development of an 8-unit apartment building where there's currently a single unit dwelling. We'll see a picture of that in a minute. So here is the aerial shot of the parcel, subject property. And probably the most salient feature about this is that there's a large portion on the back side of the property, on the northeast side, which is basically undevelopable, practically undevelopable. And there's the portion on the street side, which we'll see a little closer here in a minute, which is where the proposed development is for. But the rezoning will be for the full parcel. So this is the current unit on site. And our understanding is that this would be demolished to facilitate the apartment building. And want to look back to the public participation meeting that was held on July 10th. We've received a question on the proposed development area, and we came up with the number of 6.6% of that property would be looking to be developed. Probably 14,000 square feet of approximately 4.9 acre property. There's another question about proposed trail access, and the developer was in the room at the time. And had followed up with the point that the intention for this property was include trail access, but implemented as a controlled key fob system through the property. Another question was received at the public participation meeting regarding overflow parking, and there was a neighbor on hand to help with that one who indicated that there's some adjacent streets that were usually used for overflow parking for Main Street, where it's such a high use boulevard. We also received correspondence from Tim Hughes from 161 Main Street, who's immediately adjacent to this property, who cited that there's a change of character in what's being proposed from the existing residential neighborhood, would reduce their backyard privacy, and had some comments on the effect of new development on neighborhood existing residents. Dr. Al-Rafidi was also present and has provided some correspondence on the proposed development. That he's planned to have it for designed for professional tenants, and that the existing structure was not in a condition to be renovated, so they had to look at something else there. So, a little bit on policy, not too much. So, policy item 7, highlight the first one. Well, this is we had to look to meet one of the 3 conditions, the following conditions, for us to consider it for a zoning change. And the first one is that the proposed zone is enabled by this plan for use in the same designation. It's designated residential, and the 8-unit structure that is being contemplated is as a residential use. And here's the designation map to back up that point in orange. So for policy IM8, it shall be the intention of council when considering a rezoning application or other land use bylaw amendment application that includes specific development proposal to have regard for the following matters. And again, highlight the first one, that the proposal is in conformance with the intent of the strategy and the requirements of all other town bylaws and regulations. So staff has determined that it meets the intent of the strategy with what they're proposing, and there'll be some few comments on how it stacks up with the land use bylaw in a moment. We also have additional language in the MPS regarding residential development, and 5.1 objectives and goals states that in terms of housing and residential neighborhoods, we're to promote and accommodate an array of dwellings with different prices, locations, and tenure. Also, 3.2.2, housing residential, that the housing objectives of the strategy strive to facilitate a mix of quality housing types which reflect the diversified needs, income levels, ages, and lifestyles of town residents. Further objective of the strategy is to achieve a greater proportion of the regional housing market in the town. The policies will address such issues as affordability, quality design, alternative housing needs, and density in all residential areas while maintaining the character of existing residential neighborhoods within the town. So policy GD4, it shall be the intention of council to ensure that growth and development within the town is efficient and cost effective, and kind of focused on the last 2 points as most relevant, by concentrating the new development in adequately serviced and properly planned areas, and encouraging and facilitating infill development on underutilized and existing undersized lots within the built-up area of the town. Not too many more policies to go. It should be the intention of council, therefore, to take into account other potential development scenarios that may be permitted as a result of the proposed zone change when evaluating a rezoning application. So that's policy IM9 rather. And this speaks to the fact that while they may be proposing a 9-unit multi-unit building on that particular spot on the lot, we have to consider what may be opened up as potential for the remainder. I mentioned earlier that there's really some limitations on what can be developed on the remainder of the property without a significant effort to be put into it, so it's practically not feasible. And this map speaks to that, looking at some of the constraints that are there between the flood overlay, the floodway fringe overlay, and slopes greater than 25%. So really it's the pinkish portion of the property nearest to the road that is truly developable there. So with respect to the land use bylaw, the subject property meets the minimum lot area and frontage areas required for the R3 zone. The proposed 8-unit apartment building is a permitted use within the zone, subject to site plan approval. So that would be the next process for the rezoning to go through. Upon receipt of a complete site plan approval application, a comprehensive review of the proposed development will be conducted to ensure full compliance with land use bylaw, and that'll be done by one of our development officers. So in terms of next steps, here we are at September 8th, and again, this would go to second reading on the September 29th meeting of council. that ends my presentation.
Thank you again. Are there any questions for Director Shoup? Any clarification questions from council? None, so I'll open the floor now to the applicant if he wants to present, but I think he's not here, so we'll move on. If there's any public comments, we'll invite you up to the podium to make any comments you want to make. I guess there's none of those too. So I guess I'll thank everybody for coming. Thank you, Director and staff and council. It's always important to hear from the public, so we will take all this into consideration when we conclude at the end of the month. So with that, I will call this hearing concluded at 5:26 p.m. Thank you.